Welcome back, everyone, to the Founders Only podcast. I am so excited today to welcome my dear friend, Tonya Turrell. Tonya is the founder and CEO of The Launchpad, a visionary leader with over 20 years of experience in tech entrepreneurship. She transformed her first company, Leads on Demand, into a multi-million-dollar success, ranking number 209 on the Inc. 5000 list. In 2023, the Launchpad ranked 123 on the Inc. 5000, and Tonya was named to the Inc. Female Founders 250 list. Her latest venture, the Launchpad, developed technologymatch.com, a product revolutionizing B2B tech matchmaking. Known for innovation, resilience, and growth, Tonya continues to push the boundaries of SaaS and tech. Welcome, Tonya. So can you share your journey to becoming the founder of Launchpad? Like, how did that happen? How did the stars align for that?
I think my journey wasn't really some sort of magical aha moment where the skies opened up and I thought, I'm going to create a tech matchmaking platform. In reality, it's been sort of this slow simmer that eventually boiled over because I've been in this space, the B2B lead generation space, for more than 25 years. And I think like a lot of entrepreneurs, my path was really shaped by frustration. Frustration with how tech companies were generating leads, and even really more so how IT buyers were bombarded with unwanted sales outreach. And because we were the ones doing the unwanted sales outreach as an agency, it was really clear to me that there was a gap and there needed to be a better way to connect. So as a founder of lead gen agencies over the past, 25 plus years, I just kept hearing these pain points from both sides. Like IT buyers wanted more autonomy, more privacy. They didn't want sales spam, basically. And sellers were spending huge budgets on lead generation, but it just wasn't converting. And the truth is the market had evolved, the IT buyer had evolved, but the strategy didn't evolve. And that's when I thought, what if we created something more like a dating site to connect authentically buyers to sellers? So not trying to set anyone up on a romantic dinner here, but the principle's the same, where tech buyers get to be in control. They get to choose who they connect with, no pressure, no unsolicited outreach. It really was about flipping the dynamic and giving them the power to make the first move, like Bumble.
So when did you embark on creating, when did the idea happen, and how long did it take you from the time you had the idea to the time you had some kind of proof of concept or MVP?
So long. So much longer than you think. I honestly had the idea with my last business in Leads on Demand. It was really clear that the old methods of lead generation weren't working. So I had the idea then. We started moving towards it then. And that was, I owned that company 2010, 11 to 2015. So the idea really was born somewhere in that time frame, but I had the opportunity for an exit. So when I exited, I planted this idea with the acquirer of our business. And they attempted something like it, but not quite. It wasn't what I envisioned. And so, I always said, if nobody's built this by the time my non-compete was up with that business, then I will build it. And so 2020 comes around, nobody's built it. So that's when I really started the journey.
Was this your first, true SaaS platform that you were building then?
I'm learning all of that for the first time now. Yeah. So, we spent a year in design. We bootstrapped almost the whole thing. Yeah. Until very recently, we bootstrapped. We've only just started fundraising. So, we used our agency profits to fund the development. So we spent about a year in design, a couple years in development, and then we launched the beta last year, and we're getting ready to launch our MVP.
And how did you begin to share with your target audience? How did you begin to share when you had a beta?
Yeah, I think that's the beauty in the slow approach, like the beauty in the long game, and that we built an agency first. So we had that one on one human contact. Flip the model of the agency to the IT buyer. So in all the agencies I've owned in the past, it was always focused on the technology client and generating leads for them or creating demand for them. And this idea of creating demand never made sense to me in that there's organic, real demand in the marketplace. So really it was about flipping the model and aligning IT buyers' needs to our technology clients' leads and then making the match. So the Launchpad really started out as an agency flipping the model to the IT buyer and serving their needs because, by default, clients win. If it's the true match, then that's a much more closable opportunity. And, on the client side, we were always hearing first appointments are great, but leads go dark. They're not necessarily converting. And in this model, because it's IT buyer driven and it's matchmaking versus demand creation, it's just an inherently more closable opportunity because it's a real need.
So who is your actual target audience in terms of who's buying the access? Who is the subscriber? Is it both the buyer and the seller in terms of payment?
Yeah. So in terms of payment, it's the technology client. So they pay to be listed in the marketplace. They pay to showcase their solutions. And then when those solutions align to what an IT buyer is looking for, there's a match. And so our platform feeds them the matches and they can kind of, peruse the pages, determine what's a fit. And when they accept the match, then they can search incognito and not be seen, not have unwanted sales outreach. But when they accept the match, meaning they want to do vendor discovery with this particular vendor, then the vendor sees their information and they can connect.
So let's rewind the clock now. So before the Launchpad and even before you became an entrepreneur, who was Tonya?
Gosh, great question. And I'm trying to remember the pre-entrepreneur version of Tonya. But, you'd probably find me this really ambitious, kind of stubborn go-getter with big dreams, but no idea where they were headed yet. Like, I wanted to do something big, but I didn't wake up one day thinking I'm going to be an entrepreneur and start a business that shakes up the tech world. In fact, I don't even think the word entrepreneur was on my radar. And I became an entrepreneur really young, like 28, 29, something like that. And at that time, I don't even think I knew who I was yet. And it really was through entrepreneurship that I figured that out. Building a business taught me what I was capable of, and more importantly, really showed me who I had to become in order to create the kind of business and life I wanted. So that's one of the things that I love most about being an entrepreneur is it's not just about scaling a business. It's constantly, it's about becoming the next best version of yourself, right? Every time you take your business to the next level, you have to level up personally too. And it's like this ongoing process of growing into higher and higher expressions of yourself, which I love. I don't know if there's anything quite in life, maybe motherhood definitely, that does that, right? Yeah, this process of becoming over and over and over again. So I think before becoming an entrepreneur, I was really just figuring it out. I didn't have a lot of answers, but I think I had a lot of curiosity and the willingness to take risks. Crazy, stupid risks that I see now in hindsight. Didn't know it at the time. But I wouldn't change a thing because every twist and turn helped me become who I am today. And I love this question so much, Mia. And I'm just, I'm really curious. I know that this is an interview, but I would love to hear your answer to that too, because it's such a great question. Before you became an entrepreneur, who were you? No one's asked before.
Exactly. And I love now, after having this conversation with, dozens of entrepreneurs on this show, I love how there's really kind of like three different answers that I hear. There's the first answer, which I would say I fall in that bucket, which was I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I don't know another time when I was an entrepreneur. Maybe I wasn't calling myself an entrepreneur, but for me, my first business, I was 7. I was selling teddy bear postcards door to door in my neighborhood. I had been selling something to somebody for as long as was pretty much since I could read, basically. And then there's the second group of, I really kind of fell into this. Like this, I didn't have any intention to be an entrepreneur. I had a good idea, and I was able to bring that idea to life and bring it to market and solve a problem. And, most of the time in that bucket, it is the person was experiencing a problem themselves and said, hey, like, I should just solve this for everybody and not just myself. And then they embark in solving the problem and, they start a business. And then there is the third bucket of, I was ambitious. I didn't know entrepreneurship was my path, but I knew I wanted to do something, create something. There's still a creator.
Yeah. Sure.
Currently. And so, but I wanted to touch, just kind of add to my agreement when you're saying there's nothing, and I've said this before on the show, there's nothing that will, or rather, you can't build a business and not build yourself. Like professional and personal development go hand in hand, or you will get stuck in one or the other. It's impossible.
True. Yeah.
Totally. And the motherhood, or parenting, and I say parenting, you learn patience. In marriage, you get a mirror put in front of your face, and it really challenges who you are. You're like, wow, I'm really messed up. I didn't know how messed up I was. That's when you go down that path. But then building a business is similar to me to a marriage where, I was thinking about this morning, like if you don't approach building your business, treating your business like its own entity, the same way that you feed a marriage like it's its own entity,
yes,
you will fail. It's just a constant evolution and progression, for sure.
Yeah, it is its own entity. Like I say that all the time. If we take care of the business, it takes care of all of us. So we put the health of the business first, and then we're all taken care of. Yeah.
Exactly. So what types of things did you like to do when you were growing up? Like when you were a kid, Tonya, before graduating high school, like what types of interests and hobbies did you have?
I grew up in Japan, so I had a little bit of a different upbringing. And you know what? I always worked I think I started working. I started working in a restaurant probably when I was 10 or 11 years old. My mom worked in a restaurant, a family friend, and I just worked. I always wanted to earn money. And then when I was 12, I grew up on a Marine base in Japan, and they put you summer hire to just like keep kids out of trouble in the summertime. So I always worked. And during the school year, I waited tables at the officers club and taught English off face. Like I modeled. Like I just always wanted to make my own money. So that is kind of how I spent my free time. It was just hustling.
I say to people also who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs or in the early stage of entrepreneurship, like you have to have a job first for the love of God. Like before you start building that big business, you better get a job, because so many people you can't build a culture if you've never experienced a bad one.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. Yeah, so true. Yeah, I really had the unique benefit of like my first real job out of college was working for this amazing company owned by a husband and wife team with an amazing culture. They did B2B tech lead gen, so that's really where I learned everything that I know now. And they were acquired by a public company. So we watched the culture go from this just amazing family culture where it was really focused on taking care of the people, and then the people took care of the company, to, running a business on a balance, based on a balance sheet, and the culture just sort of tanked. So early on in my really early 20s, I got to see both, and that really shaped the entrepreneur that I'd become. I got to see both, what I want to do and what I don't want to do.
Yep. I that's the best. That's the best situation when you're exposed to both. But I definitely think that if you have only been exposed to good, it's a little bit difficult for you to know what you don't want to create.
Yeah, true. True in life too, right? Like, we need contrast. We need to know what we don't want. Sometimes we need to go through a whole bunch of shit and what we do want to know what we do want.
Yep. Same with dating, right?
Yeah.
I kiss a before
exactly.
It's the same.
It's the same.
So then what at 28-ish, what was happening in your life that put you where you were in this crossroads where you decided, I'm going to create something myself right now. This is what I'm going to do. Instead of get a job, I'm going to do this. What were you thinking?
At the time, I had a job, and I heard about an opportunity. So a client, AOL, they were a client of the company that I had worked at previously, and they were really looking to expand. This is really going to date this because this is like 2002-ish. They wanted to grow their AOL Internet Yellow Page directory sales. So this is sort of pre-Google search being what it is, when we were moving from like physical hard copy, those big yellow pages, to online directories. And they were growing that product, and they, like I said, the company that I was sort of raised in, grew up in, was just incredible. They delivered incredible results to their clients. So they really wanted to grow the seats at that company, but that company didn't want to grow seats with them. So they really were looking for people with a pedigree of that company. And so the opportunity came along to start a business, using what we've learned at that business to create a inside sales team to drive sales to AOL Internet Yellow Page ad listings. And so, I really didn't know what I was doing at the time. And that's actually a blessing because, it didn't occur to me that, so crazy story. The director of that deal found out that a member services center in Columbus, Ohio was shutting down, and they had just done like a whole bunch of PR around the fact that they were creating jobs in Columbus. So there was a member services facility with 250 employees that were going to get laid off. And so he sort of overheard about this PR nightmare of, they just had the governor to create all these jobs, and now they're going to shut all these jobs down. And he was trying to grow Yellow Pages, so he reached out and said, look, are you interested in interviewing these people and launching a company? We'll give you a contract, as many seats as you can take. And being so young and naive, I said yes, and went up and interviewed all these people. I hired about half of them. And, I wasn't thinking about how am I going to make that payroll before the funds come in. It was just like, oh, opportunity, yes. So I launched my business with 108 employees overnight. It's a loan from a guy called Nevada Jimmy to make my first payroll. He was a connection for my AOL contact in those days.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, just total naivety. Didn't even have the AOL contract signed yet. Moved my whole life to Columbus. We were leasing space in an AOL facility, which had never been done before, to a private company. We were in a CompuServe Netscape network operations center, like with security higher than Fort Knox. And so they wouldn't even let us in the space because we didn't have a signed contract yet. So I started training these people off-site at a hotel conference room, and it never even dawned on me that I have I don't even remember what the payroll was, but maybe a couple $100,000 payroll. Never dawned on me. I just naively went through the whole thing, and it worked out. Praise God.
Wait, wow. Hell of a story. Oh, wow.
Yeah, how about that in a long time.
When you first started with it, I was like, I feel like I need to put a warning. Do not attempt to set hard audition.
No, yeah. Don't leave me alone.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so now you've answered that question quite thoroughly. So the next one. So, what key strategies helped you scale the Launchpad to become a top-ranking SaaS company on the Inc. 5000? So we're fast-forwarding now to launch.
So I think, one of the most important strategies for me was flipping that model, the lead generation model, on its head and putting the IT buyer in the driver's seat. Decided really early on that instead of focusing on demand creation for our tech clients, we're just going to fully serve the IT leaders in whatever they need. And as it happened, I launched the business in early 2020, and then I think 6 weeks later, so February 2nd, 2020 was when my non-compete was up. And 6 weeks later, and everybody knows what happened. And so it's just, sort of a perfect storm of events in that we flipped the model to serve the IT buyer. And then all of a sudden, IT buyers have major tech initiatives to be able to pivot to work from home, remote work, securely through the cloud. So, within the first 6 weeks of launching, we were the ones IT buyers relied on to source the technology that they need when there were supply chain disruptions all over the world. And our tech clients had to cancel all their event marketing because of travel. So all those budgets got redirected to us. And so I think I really wanted a slow, steady start. I had 5 years off where I was world schooling my kids, traveling all over the world. I was not ready to work, 20-hour days again. And, just because of how the stars aligned, it grew the business really, really fast because of that. And it was just, this vision to serve the needs of the market where they were and create a different way for buyers to connect to solution providers. And then, I also think that led to this natural, organic sort of a deep listening to the IT buyer audience who no one really listened to before because the money was with the tech clients. So everybody was serving tech clients. So we really listened to what IT buyers were telling us and honestly what they weren't saying too, right? So they didn't want to be sold to. They wanted the freedom to research and decide on their own terms. And then on the flip side, tech providers were struggling to connect with tech buyers who would just kind of ghost them after the first meeting. So their leads weren't converting. So really listening to those frustrations and solving for them became the foundation of the growth. So I would say deep strategic engagement with our community of both IT buyers and tech companies was hugely important. And then listening to them and creating a solution in response to those pains. And also just building a strong team culture, because scaling a business is hard, and without the right people, it's impossible. So building a team that's as passionate about the vision as I am, I think that's been critical because it's clear, over time, it's very clear who's tapped into the vision and they stay engaged even through the hard times. And as a bootstrap business, there have been hard times, and we had this incredible team engaged, whether it was high or low. They were just engaged with what we're building, and that energy is contagious. It helped us to stay innovative and push boundaries and stay flexible enough to pivot when the market told us to pivot. So, yeah, I think I think that, and just committing to the long game. Like, there is no overnight success, no matter what it looks like. And scaling a business isn't about vanity metrics or quick wins. It's really about creating something sustainable and meaningful. So not rushing it, planting the seeds, watering them, giving them time to grow. And that patience is just now beginning to pay off right about the time that I'm starting to lose patience, which is perfect. Yeah, listening to customers, building a killer team, and playing the long game, I think, are the big strategies.
I have a wild card question that I want to ask you that we perhaps share in common, but have you, along the way in building your businesses, have you ever had a moment where you felt like you had to do something differently just because you are a woman of color?
Yes. I would say not so much today as in the early days. In the early days, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of support for women. It was, I mean, it's, we've been to the events. It's like 80-90% men. I think that's why we gravitated towards each other, right? So it's still primarily male dominated, but especially it's so much better than it was. I'll say, like, in the early 2000s, I was the one at home, running the business, creating all the processes and workflows in order to run this business. We went from, 2 to 108 employees overnight. And so, like, I was the one in the weeds, hustling, pulling all the pieces together to be able to make that business work. While the guys all went and did premise sales. So they travel from city to city to sell AOL, Internet Yellow Pages. I had a male co-founder at the time who I later learned was a former AOL executive that they placed with me. That's a whole other story. But, he and a primarily male sales team that they put together within my business got to go do all the premise sales, like off-site, outside sales, travel all over the country, have nice dinners, drink good wine. And I was, working my 18-hour days, just gearing it out. So I would say definitely in those days, I didn't feel like I had a seat at the table. I felt like the workhorse that got it done. And today it feels different, although I am very aware that sometimes I'm one of the very few women in the room.
Yes. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
That last part. I feel like I earned my seat.
Yes.
But I still feel like, what the hell? Why?
Please, I just feel like I have to prove myself so much more than men in the room have to prove themselves, for sure.
Yes.
But, I feel for women starting out, although it's so much better than it was.
Yeah.
But it took, 20-something years of experience and winning and failing and learning to have the confidence to know that I've earned my seat at the table. I didn't feel that when I first started. And honestly, I see the men, they're entitled to it. Like, they've got the seat. They're entitled to it.
Entitled. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
That's definitely been my experience.
So what's your superpower, would you say?
So 3 words come to mind: vision, action, intuition. And I think, vision means I get to lean into the future and see where the business can go next and make strategic decisions that push us in that direction. It is about dreaming big, but it's more than that. I think it's also about moving into action aligned towards that big dream. So, I think one of my superpowers is being able to move into action, especially when things go sideways. I think when a lot of people freeze up in crisis, I just naturally move into action, and I'm a big believer in forward momentum. Like, I did experience a bankruptcy early on in my entrepreneurship, and the thought of going backwards was just never, or flatlining, it was just not an option. It was always like, okay, here we are. This is a springboard to something better. This is, it's a rock bottom springboard up. I'm going to keep moving forward. So I think that just idea of keep moving, even if the path isn't perfectly clear, action creates that clarity. And I don't know if I ever shared this with you, Mia, but oh gosh, how many years ago now? When my son was 10, he's 17 now, so I guess about 7 years ago, he was bit by a shark, and I told you, yeah, everybody froze, and lifeguards, everyone, and I just moved into action, like ordering lifeguards around, take your shirt off, make a tourniquet, call 911, get somebody here, get them to the hospital. I didn't have time to feel anything. I was just moving into action, and I think that experience showed me, action saved his life. Not thinking, not feeling, just moving and doing what I intuitively, instinctively knew to do. And I think the same thing is true in business, like freezing, worrying. I see people do that, and it really gets you nowhere. It is about action. And I almost said it's about the right action, but the truth is, there is some truth to that, but also wrong action is good action.
Yes.
Because you can see feedback, and it's like, okay, that was not the right action. Don't do that again. Learn, do something different. So I think action aligned to the vision. It might be wrong, it might be right. There is really no wrong. It's just feedback to do it differently. So yeah, vision, action, and then intuition, right? I think
vision, action, and intuition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And when you first said those three words to me, I instantly thought of how being a woman, being a mother, was going to give you an edge.
Yeah.
In doing those things, and it's true. I totally have a different what is it called? Traumatic experience with my son, but going through that process of just keeping it moving. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, keeping it moving and energy moving forward or in some direction, just moving.
Yes, because the way that we feel to protect our children is so intuitive to, just jump into action.
Yeah.
I totally understand how I get the parallels between this. This is what I'm trying to say. Just find my words, but I totally can imagine and envision and feel what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that, I think as women, intuition is really a superpower that we are taught to silence and not listen to. And I think every person has a story of I just wish I listened to my intuition that time. So, I'm trying to be better about that, about just tuning in, getting quiet, and what does this higher perspective of myself say? And can I lean into that? Can I trust that? And I'm becoming more and more trusting of that voice.
So let's talk about fear. Fear is something that I think every founder faces. So how do you handle fear? And whether that's been fear of failing or starting something new, what do you think is the best way to get over fear and move on to actually taking action?
Really good question. And, fear is always just going to be part of the journey, right? There's no escaping that. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that fear doesn't have to stop you. And I think the key to that is not to wait for the fear to go away, which is what I see a lot of hopeful entrepreneurs doing. I will do it when I feel ready, when I can get over this fear, when I can get more training or more whatever. And I think the key is it's not to wait for the fear to go away, but to feel it and reframe it if you can, and just move through it and know that it's just a part of the process. So many people get paralyzed because they're thinking about what they might lose if things go wrong, right? The risk is paralyzing. But risk doesn't have to mean loss. It could also mean potential. And so I think reframing that, every time I ventured into like uncertain territory, it can feel scary, but I focus on what I could gain. And I think that's why having a big vision and being plugged into that vision is so important, because it pulls you. And, just focus on what you can gain, because isn't that the whole point of taking risks as entrepreneurs, is to go after something bigger, something you believe in. So, and the last part of your question was action, right? And I think, well, I've learned that action is actually the antidote to fear. You're not going to get over your fear until you take some action. So when fear shows up, I'd say don't freeze. I've always been someone who just moves into action. I don't want to wait to feel ready or less scared, because that could last forever. That could be a forever excuse to not move forward. So take one step towards the vision, one step at a time, and then the next, and then the next. And it's almost like the next step will reveal itself as soon as you take that inspired action. And that's really the only way I know to move through fear, is just feel it, acknowledge it, reframe it, and move. Yeah,
Move and jump. This question makes me think of skydiving. The fear that I felt in the plane, going all the way to the point where I had to put my feet out on the ledge and look out 14,000 feet up. And when I actually jumped and I felt like a bird, and I got the reward of actually seeing the mountains and this beautiful view, and I literally felt like I was flying, and the reward was worth the risk of something, right? And I would have never experienced that. Like, there's no other experience that really makes you feel like you're a bird besides skydiving.
amazing.
I mean, even if you bungee jumping doesn't feel like you're a bird, or what is it called? Rappelling down a building doesn't make you feel like you're a bird. Yes, it's dealing with your fear of heights, right? There's different ways that you can overcome a fear of heights, or you can confront a fear of heights. But each experience, the way that you take the risk, the way that you actually take action, could give you such a
100%. And that story just made me think, another thing that is important to recognize, like, in your body, you know what fear feels like in your body, because I was starting to feel it as you were talking about getting your feet like out of the plane and getting ready to jump, and I could feel that stirring, that fear. But it feels very, very close to excitement. Like, is it fear? Is it excitement, right? And I think, that's part of reframing, is it can feel like fear in the body, but that feels very close to excitement. So if we're focusing on the opportunity in the uncertainty, and feel that stirring in your belly of what could be interpreted as fear, it could also be interpreted as excitement.
Yes. And I always think too of, how many people deal with analysis paralysis and not actually getting the reward because they overthink it. And speed is really the key in terms of innovation, in terms of being in business. You want to be the first person to the punch as much as you can. And you want to take that risk. If you're overthinking it, if you're worrying about the fear, you don't take the risk, somebody might beat you to it, and then you lose the opportunity. Sometimes it could be too late for you to take the risk because you've sat there and thought about it so much, and now it could be a bunch of reasons why you miss out on the opportunity, but it could very well just be your competitor beat you to the punch because
that's right. I can't tell you how many people since we've launched our tech marketplace, connecting buyers and sellers, how many people I've talked to that said, "Oh, I had that idea. Well, yeah, those ideas are out there in the sphere for any of us to grab, but who's going to grab it and run with it?
Definitely. And another parallel with that is AI, and just integrating, whether you're integrating AI into your platform or whether you're building an AI-powered platform, like the speed to execution, the speed to go to market is so key because, yes, there's a lot of people who have the innovative mindset who may be able to come up with the idea, but are they going to execute it like you? And if you don't take that jump and if you don't put your unique spin on it, then that specific idea is nobody's going to think of the idea,
and nobody's going to bring it to life in exactly the same way. Only you can do that, right?
Exactly. Great answer and question. So let's talk about being a woman. Let's talk about, wow, you've had over 20 years of experience now, being a leader, being a business owner, being an innovator, being a creator and a builder of business and culture. What advice would you give to this next generation of female leaders who are specifically breaking into the SaaS or tech industry?
First of all, I'd say welcome. We need you, right? It's definitely gotten better over the years. In the early days, early 2000, sometimes I was the only woman in the room. So it's definitely gotten better. But I mean, you see, we're at the same events. It is 80-90% male, and the females in the room gravitate towards each other like we did. So it's still a really male-dominated space, but it's getting better and better all the time, I think. And that's why the next generation of female leaders is so crucial. So my biggest piece of advice is don't wait to feel ready. Same, kind of going back to that fear thing. Don't wait to feel ready, and don't wait to be invited to the table. Make your own table. So if you're waiting for the fear to disappear or for everything you'll wait forever. If you wait for an invitation to the table, you could wait forever. That invitation may never come. So take action. I mean, it really does go back to just take action. Take one step of inspired action towards what you want to create. And that movement begins to create momentum. And I think, also women bring a different perspective to tech, right? I'm in a female tech accelerator right now, fourth wave. And the kind of tech these incredible women are bringing to the market are needed. But, it takes a woman to create some of these technologies. And I think that's a good thing that we have more a collaborative, empathetic approach to leadership and problem solving. And I think the tech industry needs more of that. So rather than, and I feel like we've had this conversation before, rather than try and fit into a man's world, like don't try and fit into an outdated mold of what leadership is supposed to look like or what the tech space has looked like in the past, but make your own mold. Like bring your full self to the table. It's that uniqueness, that soul essence of you as a woman, that's a superpower.
Yes. I was thinking of like some words I could use to describe some of the superpowers that we have as women that we can bring to the business space. And some of the words that came into my mind were nurturing, creative problem solving, empathetic leadership. And it's not 100% of us who have these superpowers, but I feel like there's more of women who have these specific superpowers than maybe men have. And how can we make those specific gifts that we're bringing to the industry, how can we make that be appreciated and valued like it really should be? And I also am thinking around this question, like, so if we are willing as women individually to take the risk and either find a seat at the table, build our own table, however we're going to make our entrance into the industry, how do we build a support infrastructure for women to be able to get over some of the hurdles that they're experiencing in life as they are building their businesses? Someone that is also in the space I was listening to the other day, and she was talking about how her husband had said, that she was in her masculine energy too much. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, is that really a thing? Is this masculine energy thing, is that really a thing? Or is this just a way to say that you're not being a traditional woman? Like, what is masculine energy?
So it's interesting because I look at it this way, and like we all have both, right? We have masculine and feminine, all of us, to different degrees. And you need both in life and in business. So I think about like masculine is the riverbanks, the structure, the guardrails, and business needs structure like that, right? So the rivers need the riverbanks in order to not flow everywhere. But the feminine is the river. It's the flow, and that's the power, right? The power of that river, the power of that flow. And so we need the structure, the masculine, and we need the feminine, which is that flow. And I think that's something that we really bring uniquely to business is being able to lean into that part of ourselves that is more pulled by vision versus the I don't want to say hustle and grind because there still has to be some hustle, but it's the ability to sort of set the vision and allow yourself to be pulled by something greater versus the muscling through it, powering through it, right? And I think that's the power of the feminine. As for that person that you were talking about, I question where that was coming from because I don't know. I'm leaning towards what you were thinking it was about, but I think there is a power to kind of balancing that masculine and feminine energy and understanding we need both. We need the riverbanks and the river. Without the river, what's the point of the structure of the banks? It's that flowing river that has that power.
Yes. I just hope we move just as an industry and as just the business world, just really move into not just accepting women, really seeing the value, the unique value that we bring, the unique perspective that we bring, and the experience that we bring. Our ability to juggle and multitask and deal with every daggone crazy thing that comes. We are masters at multitasking, at staying strong through the most difficult circumstances, pushing through illness, pushing through not feeling our best. Like, we just have these superpowers, and I want more than a seat at the table. I really want the whole dynamic to shift where it's not like, oh, well, let's make sure that, we have some representation from women. Like, we can do things that people just can't do. I mean, let's just keep it. You need everybody. Just like you said, we need both the masculine and the feminine energy. And without both of those in play, it's not going to work.
But women are the creative force, right? Like we give birth to life, literally.
Yeah.
And so, and a business feels like that sometimes too, like a giving birth.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like your child. A business is like your child, and who better to raise and nurture the child than a woman? So I just think we're so integral to the success and the growth and the well-roundedness of the business.
I think it's important that we build our own networks. Talk about build a seat at the table or build your own table. It's also really important that we build our own networks and lean into that network. I think building strong relationships with other women who, like, I think in the last year or two, I've been just so blessed to be surrounded by a network of women who cheer me on and support me and lift me up when things are feeling tough. In April, I had to make some really tough decisions in my business. We're going through a transition from agency to pure SaaS, and had to make some cuts on my leadership team, which were tough. These were, long-standing relationships. And I didn't think I would have the guts to do it. Like, it was lots of crying, lots of worrying, lots of sleepless nights, and I really didn't think that I would have the courage to follow through on this decision, even though it needed to be made. And I had a call with, my network of women, and it was a 90-minute call. And by the end of that 90 minutes, because they lifted me up and they validated that it was the right choice, and they encouraged me, and they were the lift that I needed to have the courage to go and do this really scary, tough thing that I had to go and do. And I did, and it's been a great decision for my business, but I couldn't have done that alone.
How do you think we can tap into these? I see over the past year with the change in the economy, specifically in this industry, that a lot of the quota protecting organizations, initiatives are dwindling. They are shuttering. Where do we go from here as women looking for these support systems and networks? What do you think? How have you found these yourself?
I just found them through relationship, through people, right? So people that I've met through different events, industry events, just being connected to like-minded people through my network. So I would say I'm probably part of 2 or 3 really powerful networks of people where I know that there are women I can call, and I will get the shoulder to cry on, or the cheerleader that I need, or, whatever it is that I need in that moment. That, all of these networks that I'm thinking of, they were built by friends. That, these were not existing networks. These are people who went out and built these communities for this purpose. So I think beyond leaning into your network, I think it's time to create those communities ourselves. If we're not finding it elsewhere, then we've got to create it.
What is one book, podcast, or resource that has profoundly impacted your perspective and mindset as a founder, Tonya?
I've read a lot of business books, but I don't think any of them have impacted me as some non-business books. So my answer is not going to be traditional, but there are 2 that come to mind. And one specifically that comes to mind is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Okay. I've heard of her.
Such a good book. Oh, I will send it to you. I've got a stack because I gift them all the time. It's one of my favorites. And it really is it's like a love letter to creativity. So it's really about creative living beyond fear. And so, Liz Gilbert talks about the magic of ideas and how they're like a living thing that chooses us. And so as a founder and innovator, you've got to stay open to ideas like an antenna and grab them when they come up and, grab them by the tail and allow them to carry you. So I love that perspective that, creativity and innovation are at the heart of entrepreneurship. And sometimes we just have to open ourselves up to those ideas and understand that creativity and fear coexist. So we have to, move forward anyway. So that's one. I just love her perspective on creativity and ideas and how to move for fear. Because it's all relevant to entrepreneurship as much as it is to, a creator, an artist, a writer. And I think it's really changed my thinking about how ideas work, and how fear, she personifies fear. And it's fear always wants to take the steering wheel. Yeah. So, fear always wants to take the steering wheel, and you have to allow fear in the car, but say, you're a passenger. You get to make any decisions. You don't even get to choose what goes on the radio station. You get to come along for the ride. I acknowledge you. Love that perspective on fear. It's a healthy perspective on how to manage fear and move through creativity. And then the other book that really opened my eyes to the power of our mind and how much our thoughts create our reality is Dr. Joe Dispenza, Supernatural.
Okay. Read that one.
Okay, I'm going to send you both. And they're not business books, but they apply. And what I love about Supernatural is it's about reprogramming your mind to break past limiting beliefs. And, as an entrepreneur, you know how important that is. Being a founder requires you to constantly push past your limits, examine your beliefs, look at your self-doubt and uncertainty. And Supernatural is really cool because it's all backed by data. He has these week-long events where he is hooking people up to EEG, EKG, taking blood and plasma, looking at brain waves. They're collecting so much data on the changes that occur in physiology and in the brain. And it's incredible the kinds of things we're capable of accomplishing when we can get out of our own way. So I think Supernatural, that's a good one. And the whole idea is I can create my future by focusing on my vision and aligning to it energetically, aligning my daily practices, my thinking, my routine, the way I approach work. So, both not business books, but both just couldn't put them down.
Yes, I love anything that talks about working through limiting beliefs. Last year, I feel like that was my biggest aha moment, is really understanding limiting beliefs and confronting them and understanding that they're just simply the antithesis to the truth. And, whatever limiting belief you have, it's literally the opposite that's true.
Right. Yeah, it's just a story that we started telling ourselves at some stage. And it's amazing when you get into, where did that originate? There's all kinds of unwinding and healing of beliefs that have to happen because, sometimes it's big trauma and sometimes it's little t trauma, right? Little things that you wouldn't,
yes,
that you wouldn't say no. Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty incredible sort of unwinding those things to free up more energy, to free up more potential in yourself.
Yep. Well, where can people find you on social media, Tonya?
Tonya Turrell on LinkedIn, Turrell, and Tonya Turrell on Instagram.
Well, this has been one of my favorite conversations. you.
I always love talking to you, Mia.
I know. So thanks everyone for joining us today, and please join us for the next episode during season 6, where we are talking to powerhouse women, exploring how they are approaching and building and creating in their businesses and lives. And so thanks for joining us, but we'll see you next time. Thanks.